My name is Jenna Carter. I'm 32 years old. And 6 years ago, I walked out of my parents' house and never went back. Back then, I was just a junior engineer barely scraping by in New York. Now, I lead security architecture for one of the top AI firms in the country. And last month, I bought a 2-bedroom condo in Brooklyn. Not bad for the girl they always said was too quiet, too strange, or just not like her brother. So when my phone buzzed at 9:47 p.m. on a cold Tuesday night in December, I wasn't expecting anything. Maybe a Slack ping, or a message from one of my coworkers. But the name on the screen made my stomach drop. Megan, my cousin, the only one in my family who had my new number. He hesitated, then picked up. "Jenna," she said softly. "It's me," I answered, already bracing. "There's something I need to tell you. Your parents? They want to talk. They're asking you to come home for Christmas." I didn't say anything, just sat on the edge of my bed, staring at nothing. "They've been asking around," Megan added. "They said it's important. They want the family together." My apartment was quiet, lit with warm yellow light and filled with the scent of tea and old books. It was mine, safe, but her words dragged up everything I'd buried. Ryan's birthday parties, where I set the table while he unwrapped gifts from relatives. My mom pausing her laughter whenever I entered the room, as if my presence dimmed the joy. And that day at 13, curled in a stiff leather chair while Dr. Patel told my parents, "Jenna's not distant by nature. She's withdrawn because she's emotionally neglected." My mother scoffed. "We love both our kids the same." But I knew she was lying. Ryan was the golden child, varsity quarterback, student government president. He got a new car at 16. I got a clearance rack sweater with the tag still attached from someone else's return. Even at Christmas, his gifts glittered under the tree. Mine were practical, generic, sometimes forgotten entirely. And now, after 6 years of radio silence, they wanted me back. They had no idea who I'd become. I wasn't surprised that they still saw me as the same girl I used to be. To them, I'd always be the quiet one, the odd one, the daughter who didn't laugh at the right moments or speak when spoken to, the one who disappeared into books and computers. Instead of cheerleading and prom dresses, growing up in a small town in Northern California, the expectations were crystal clear. Boys shine, girls smile. Ryan shined. And I learned to shrink myself just to keep the peace. He was everything they wanted. Star athlete, high school president, straight teeth and camera-ready charm. At 16, he gave a speech at his graduation that made people cry. At 18, he got into Berkeley on our parents' full financial support. Meanwhile, I was sitting in the school library during lunch breaks, teaching myself to code with outdated textbooks and a loaner laptop that smelled like burned plastic. No one asked what I was working on. No one ever really asked me anything, except for Mr. Bell. He was the only teacher who looked past the silence. One day after class, he handed me a printout for a scholarship program, Future Women in Tech. I still remember what he said. "You've got something most kids don't discipline. Don't waste it trying to be someone you're not." I applied without telling anyone. Got in. Full ride. Tuition. Room. Board, everything. I told my parents 2 weeks before move-in day. My mother looked up from folding laundry and said, "New York? That's far." My father didn't even glance away from the television. "Don't expect help with rent." he muttered. I didn't. I packed my bags in silence and left the next morning. They didn't hug me, didn't drive me to the airport. No tearful goodbyes, no photos, just the click of the front door closing behind me. That was the day I decided to start over. New York didn't welcome me with open arms. It swallowed me whole. I arrived with 2 suitcases, a scholarship packet, and $186 in my checking account. My dorm room was a shared converted closet with peeling walls and 1 working outlet. My roommate dropped out after 3 weeks. I stayed because I had nowhere else to go. The city was loud, cold, unfeeling. But for the first time, that didn't scare me. It felt honest. I kept my head down, studied harder than I ever had, attended every class, sat in the front row, and spent weekends in computer labs building code no one assigned. I took notes with shaky hands and drank vending machine coffee until my teeth hurt. And I worked? Waitress at a noodle shop downtown. 12-hour shifts on weekends. 5-hour shifts after classes. My legs ached constantly. Sometimes I went to bed hungry just to make rent. No one knew. I didn't tell my parents. Didn't tell Megan. Didn't even tell the financial aid counselor who asked if I needed emergency assistance. I said no, because I'd spent my whole life being treated like I couldn't handle things, and I had something to prove. At night, I coded for myself, built apps that no one would see, joined online dev forums, and volunteered to debug strangers' projects just to learn. It became my sanctuary. One of those nights, around 2 a.m., I got an email from a visiting professor. He'd seen my GitHub profile, asked if I wanted to help on a research grant with a corporate partner. I reread the email 5 times. My fingers shook as I typed my reply. Yes, I'd love to. That's when things changed. The grant led to an internship. The internship led to a job offer before I even graduated. My final semester, I was already earning a salary. I moved out of campus housing and into a tiny studio in Queens. It had paper-thin walls and no closet. But it was mine. No one helped me get there, and no one clapped when I did. But for the first time in my life, I didn't feel invisible. I felt powerful. I didn't throw a graduation party. There were no balloons, no family photos, no dinner reservations. I went to work that day, my first official day as a full-time employee. My manager handed me a welcome kit and a company badge with my name printed clean and bold, Jenna Carter. Security developer. It was just plastic, but I stared at it for a long time. I kept my head down those first few months, learning the company systems, soaking in everything. Eventually, my ideas started getting noticed, then respected, then requested. By year 2, I'd helped patch a vulnerability for a major U.S. bank. Year 3, I presented at a tech summit. I watched entire conference rooms turn silent while I explained threat modeling to executives who barely understood what a firewall was. And they listened. Every time I stood behind a podium or led a code review, I remembered being 13 and unheard. I remembered the sweater with someone else's initials, the empty seat at the airport. Now, when I spoke, rooms stopped to listen. At 29, I was promoted to senior architect. My salary hit 6 figures for the first time. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't need to. Because real success, I'd learned, was quiet. Last fall, I called a real estate agent. I wasn't planning on buying anything yet, just curious. But when she showed me the listing in Fort Greene, I felt something shift. Red brick, big windows, 2 bedrooms, light everywhere. Within 3 weeks, I'd signed the papers. My name on the deed. Mine. It wasn't flashy, not a penthouse or a brownstone mansion, but it was warm. It was mine. 2 weeks before Christmas, I hosted a housewarming. No speeches, no fancy hors d'oeuvre, just pad thai, dumplings, floor cushions, and the people who mattered my chosen family. People who saw me when no one else did. Friends who stayed up with me during code crashes. Who brought soup when I was sick. Who told me, again and again, that I wasn't invisible. We sat on the floor. Wine in mismatched glasses. Laughter bouncing off bare walls. My friend Elise raised her glass. To Jenna, she said, the quiet one who turned silence into power. We clinked glasses, and I smiled. I took the week before Christmas off, not because I wanted to go, but because I needed to close a door that had been left half open for too long. I wrapped simple, thoughtful gifts, books I'd loved, soft scarves, candles that smelled like clean air. Nothing flashy, just quiet. Intentional things. Then I drove the 6.5 hours north to my childhood town, through rain, sleet, and finally snow. When I pulled into the neighborhood, everything looked smaller than I remembered. The streetlights dimmer, the houses older. My parents' place hadn't aged well. The siding was faded, the hedges overgrown, and the porch light flickered like a dying memory. I sat in the car for a full minute before getting out. The cold bit through my coat as I stepped onto the porch. I rang the doorbell and waited. Footsteps. Then the door creaked open. Jenna, my mother said. She blinked twice, like she wasn't sure I was real. You look different? She added. I nodded. So do you. She gave me a brief, stiff hug, then stepped aside. Come in. The scent hit me immediately, old furniture polish. Staller. And that same bowl of potpourri that had been on the coffee table since I was in middle school. Inside, the house felt darker than it used to. Smaller, as if it had shrunk around the version of me they'd frozen in time. The living room was crowded. Cousins, uncles, neighbors. Conversations paused when I walked in. Heads turned, eyes scanned. Well, look who finally showed up. Someone muttered. Is she wearing sweats? Another whispered. I looked down. Tailored black slacks. A wool coat? Yet luxury, but clearly lost on this crowd. Then Ryan stepped out of the kitchen, grinning like a politician. Everyone, this is Leah, he said. My little sister. Back from the big city. He gestured toward the woman beside him. And this is Natalie, my wife, and our future daughter, he added proudly, patting her belly. Congratulations, I said evenly. Ryan smirked. Still coding in a basement somewhere. Laughter bubbled across the room. I just smiled faintly. Something like that. My mom clapped her hands. Dinner will be ready soon. Jenna, put your things down. Ryan's using your old room as his office now. So you'll be sleeping on the couch. Of course I would. Of course he was. The dining table hadn't changed. Same old oak wood. Same uneven chairs. Same chipped casserole dish in the center. But somehow, the room felt colder. Smaller. Like it had run out of space for someone like me. I took the seat at the far end next to the kitchen door, where the cold air slipped in each time it swung open. No one said anything. No one asked where I'd been, what I'd been doing. It was like I'd never left. Or worse, like I'd never mattered. Ryan sat at the head of the table. His voice filled the room like music that never turned off. He was talking about some startup idea. Something vague about personalized nutrition apps. "We're disrupting the supplement industry," he announced proudly, cutting into his ham. "Disrupting it, how?" I asked quietly. He blinked. "By offering monthly wellness boxes with AI-calculated nutrients, tailored for each user." "That's already a thing," I said before I could stop myself. The room went quiet for a beat. Then someone chuckled. Ryan waved a dismissive hand. "Sure, but no one's doing it like we are." Dad leaned in. "How much do you need to get started?" 200 grand, Ryan said, as if he were asking for a stick of gum. I nearly choked on my water. Mom patted his hand. "We'll figure something out. Family supports family." Aunt Linda turned to me. "So, you still doing computer stuff? I'm a software architect." I said. "Oh, wow," she said, drawing out the syllables like they tasted strange. "That's technical." Uncle Ben leaned over his plate. "We're hiring at the auto shop. If you ever want to learn something with your hands." "I'm good. Thank you," I said, forcing a smile. Ryan's wife, Natalie, suddenly laughed. "Remember when Jenna used to hide under the table with a book at Christmas?" Everyone laughed except me, because I did remember. That was the only place I felt safe. After dinner, Mom handed me a pillow and a folded blanket. "The couch pulls out," she said. "Just try not to wake up too late. Breakfast is early." Of course it was. Christmas morning started the way it always had. Ryan and Natalie were the first ones down the stairs, laughing like kids, tearing into presents with loud gasps and exaggerated thank yous. The tree was buried in colorfully wrapped boxes. I watched them unwrap designer baby clothes, kitchen gadgets, even a high-end espresso machine. Then came my gifts. Thoughtful, personalized. I'd chosen each one with care. A handmade scarf for Mom in her favorite shade of blue. A rare jazz vinyl for Dad. A children's book for Natalie with a handwritten note inside. "For your daughter? May she always feel seen." Mom held the scarf to her chest. "Leah, this is beautiful," I corrected her. "Jenna? Oh, right. Jenna?" she said quickly. But when it was my turn, there was nothing. Mom gasped. "Oh no, we completely forgot." Ryan burst out laughing. "Just like when we were kids," he said. "You're not gonna cry, are you?" "No," I said. "Steady. Not this time." I reached into my purse and pulled out a small keychain, held it up so the brushed steel caught the light. "What's that?" Dad asked. "Keys," I said simply. "To my new apartment." Silence. You bought a place?" Mom asked. "I closed on it last month. 2-bedroom condo in Fort Greene." Dad leaned forward. With what money I took a breath. "I built a cybersecurity protocol for a major international bank. My company licensed it globally. I received a bonus for that contract, $150,000. Mom blinked. $150,000 after taxes. Forks froze midair. Ryan's mouth actually dropped open. Natalie looked like she wanted to disappear into the couch. Mom recovered first. "Sweetheart, that's incredible." Why didn't you tell us? Because it didn't matter to you, I said quietly. Until now. The mood shifted instantly. What had been stunned silence a moment ago turned into nervous laughter, forced compliments, and too many questions. You must be working with some big-time people, Dad said. Sitting up straighter, Mom leaned in. So tell us more about this apartment, 2 bedrooms. You said hardwood floors. You always liked hardwood. Even Ryan, now oddly quiet, managed a tight smile. That's cool, sis. Didn't know you were doing that well. Natalie added quickly. We should visit sometime. I smiled politely, but inside, I felt the air thicken. Something was coming, and I didn't have to wait long. As I packed up my things to head out, gift bags under one arm, coat over the other, Dad cleared his throat. Before you go, he said, stepping in front of me, we should talk about Ryan's business plan. I stopped. Excuse me, he smiled, like this was all perfectly normal. You mentioned your bonus earlier. And, well, Ryan has this great idea. He just needs some capital to get started. Ryan chimed in, suddenly energized. It's a solid investment. Yenna, you'd be in on the ground floor. Think equity, not charity. How much are you asking for? I asked flatly. Just 200 grand, he said, like he was asking for a ride to the airport. I mean, with what you're making, that's not much. Right, I blinked. And in that moment, it all clicked. The sudden warmth, the fake interest, the compliment about hardwood floors. They didn't care who I had become. They only cared what I could give. No, I said calmly. The room went still. What do you mean? No, Mom asked, her smile cracking. I mean, I'm not giving you money, but we're family, Dad said, as if the word still held weight. I looked at them, my parents who had laughed when Uncle Ben offered me a job washing dishes, my brother, who mocked me for hiding under the table, and now wanted my 6-figure bonus. Where was family? I asked. When you left me to figure everything out alone, you selfish brat. Ryan snapped. After everything this family did for you, I didn't flinch. What did you do for me? I asked. Calmly. Raise me, feed me. That's parenting, not a favor. You ungrateful little mom started. But I cut her off. I left this house with nothing but a suitcase and a scholarship. No one helped me. No one called. And now you want my money, Dad stepped in. We just thought no, I said. You didn't think about me at all. I grabbed my coat and gift bags. Mom followed. You'll regret this. Yenna. I turned, looked her straight in the eyes. You won't, I said. I've already spent years regretting trusting this family. Their voices chased me out the door, pleading, shouting, guilt-tripping. But I didn't turn around. Not when I got into my car. Not when I passed the stoplight I used to walk by every day after school. Not when I hit the highway. My phone buzzed constantly for the next 2 hours. Missed calls, texts, voicemails. I pulled into a rest stop, sat still for a minute, then blocked them all, one by one. Back in Brooklyn, I poured myself a glass of wine and stood by the window. City lights shimmered like silent applause. Sarah, my coworker and closest friend, heard what happened. Sorry about your folks. Don't be, I replied. This was the best gift they ever gave me. Freedom. I expected to feel heavy afterward. Regret. guilt, maybe even sadness. But what I felt was quiet. Not the suffocating silence I'd grown up with, but the kind you feel in the early morning. When the city is still sleeping and everything feels possible. Sarah called that night. Jesus. Jenna, she sighed. Your mom's called every relative from here to Ohio. Let her, I said. She'll run out of numbers eventually. She told Aunt Doreen you were a millionaire. I laughed. I'm flattered. Sarah paused. Are you really okay cutting them off for good? I looked around my apartment. My books, my plants, my life. I cut them off years ago. I said softly. This just made it official. Spring came early that year. And with it, something unexpected. His name was Daniel. I met him at a coffee shop near my office, a freelance designer who asked if he could share my table during a crowded lunch hour. We talked about fonts, ramen, and the weirdness of growing up in homes where success was never enough. He'd walked away from his own family 3 years earlier. Different story, same ending. We started meeting for coffee, then dinners, then weekends. He never asked for more than I could give. Never made me explain why my phone stayed on Do Not Disturb. One afternoon, I found myself telling him everything about Ryan. The couch, the bonus, the ask, the walk away. He listened, not like someone trying to fix anything, just like someone who cared. You don't owe them anything, he said. You built this life. No one else? It was the kindest truth I'd ever heard. 6 months later, summer wrapped the city in light. I stood on my balcony, coffee in hand, watching kids play in the park across the street. Somewhere behind me, Daniel was making pancakes, humming along to a jazz playlist. The kind of morning I used to dream about. Sarah still called every Sunday, sometimes to check in, sometimes just to gossip, but always to remind me I wasn't alone. Ryan and Natalie are still living with your parents, she told me last week. The startup's still just an idea. I smiled. Sounds familiar. Your mom's telling everyone you vanished, that you forgot where you came from? I didn't forget, I said. I just stopped apologizing for leaving. That night, I met my friends at our usual wine bar in Fort Greene. The lights were soft, the laughter easy, the air full of stories that didn't require translation. Elise raised her glass. To Jenna, she said. To choosing peace. I raised mine too. To chosen family. They echoed me to chosen family, and it echoed louder than any holiday toast I'd ever heard. My phone buzzed. An unknown number. I let it ring, then turned it face down. Because I had everything I needed right here. If you've ever felt invisible in your own family, if you've ever had to walk away to save yourself, tell me your story. Drop a comment below. Let someone know they're not alone. Because you're not. You never were. Maybe you've been the quiet one. The one who gave and still felt invisible. Maybe you grew up in a home where love had conditions, and silence felt safer than speaking up. But here's what I learned. You don't owe anyone a version of yourself that costs you peace. You are allowed to grow beyond who they think you are. You are allowed to protect your light, even if it means walking away from the people who dimmed it. And most of all, you are allowed to choose your own family. The ones who clap when you rise, the ones who stay when you fall. If this story spoke to something deep inside you, leave a comment. Tell me what you walked away from or what you're still trying to let go of. And if you're still in the middle of it, still learning to stand tall, we see you. you're not alone. Hit like if this story made you feel something. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. And subscribe for more stories that remind you your worth was never up for debate.